I've always had this idea of just being able to build a small little camper on wheels, being able to pull it out in the forest, and just enjoy a beautiful night in it. So that's exactly what this video is. I'm going to show you exactly how I made my small little camper on wheels, then we're going to enjoy a night in the forest in it. Let's go. So the first thing we're going to need for this project is a bunch of wood. And when I laid it all out, I was honestly surprised at how much there actually was. I decided to use these larger 4x4s for the corners of the build, mostly because they're super strong. I don't have to worry about these things breaking, even if this thing tips over when I'm pulling it. I also went ahead and got myself a bunch of these metal corner braces that I think are going to be perfect for the build. They're just easier, simpler, and I think going to make it super strong. They're almost like working with Legos. The pieces just kind of slide into place. The 4x4 in the middle, the 2x4s just slide into the ends, and then you just take about 20 screws or so, stick them together, and this thing is super solid. I went ahead and repeated the process, put in the 4x4, slide in the 2x4, and screwed it all together. Now I had to make the same thing I just made. I laid out the sides, put the corner braces on, put in the 4x4s, and then just a whole bunch of screws. Time to attach the two parts together. You're probably wondering why I didn't just use really long pieces of wood here, and I'll tell you. I couldn't fit it in my car, that's the reason why. So with the bottom all screwed together, this was my first chance to get a good feel of how big this thing's gonna be. Next up, working on the roof supports. So just like the bottom of the build, it's going to use these metal braces for the corners, some 2x4s in between them. So I just go ahead and repeat that on both sides, and once I have the 2x4s snugly in place, I screw it all together. I went ahead and tipped the main structure over on its side, just because it's going to be a lot easier for me to install the main support beams across the top because they're in two pieces. So I slid them into place, connected them together with a beam across of it, and then just tightened it all down. And now it's time to do it to the other side. I tipped it on over, I slid in the pieces, I combined it together, and I threw in some screws. And that should be the last and only times it should ever tip over. I wanted to add a couple more support beams in the middle just to make sure this thing is extra strong and to make me feel like I'm not going to fall out of it if I roll out of bed or something. So I attached some metal braces to a 2x4, I placed it in the middle, and I just screwed it into place. I went ahead and repeated the process on the other side, and the structure was coming along. So this is going to be the final dimensions of the structure, and I'm getting pretty excited about it. Definitely going to have more than enough room for myself and all my things in there. Time to get some wheels on it. I grabbed myself some longer 1x6 pieces of wood. I drilled 4 holes on each of the sides, then I took the wheel and I went ahead and threaded 4 bolts through the holes, and they lined up perfectly with the holes on the wheels, and I took some washers and nuts and I tightened them all down, and we got ourselves a wheel, and they spin super smooth. I went ahead and did the same thing on the other side of the board, and now we have our 2 back wheels. Now we gotta do the same thing to the other board, except with the front wheels. So I drilled 4 holes in it, I attached all the wheels with some nuts and bolts, and then I went ahead and ratcheted them all down. And these ones are a little bit different than the back wheels as they spin, but they also rotate around freely. I grabbed myself some jack stands just to help me lift up the structure. I lifted it up and I placed them underneath it to hold it in place as we get the wheels on. So I slid the back wheels under, I lined them up where I wanted it, and I screwed them into place with these metal brackets. These wheels said they're rated for something like 500 pounds each, so they're really not a problem when moving it around. Perfect. Time for the front ones. I lift it up, put it on the jack stand, I block off the back to keep it from rolling away. Then I go ahead and slide the front ones under, I line them up where I want it, and I tighten them down with the brackets. Now we got ourselves a little camper structure on wheels, and it moves very freely. Super happy with it. Let's get some floors on it. I took a bunch of long pieces of board that I cut to length. I laid them out evenly spaced along the floor length, and then I went around with some screws and I tightened them all into place. I then went ahead and cut a bunch of thin pieces of board that I laid in between the in-between spaces on the floor, and then I took my drill and I went around and tightened those all down into place. Now that we got the wood of the floor done, the only thing left to do is to test it out. And yep, pretty comfy. The next step is to work on the door frame. I went ahead and I cut myself and put together these small little pieces of wood that I attached to the main frame. And these are going to be what the door fits in between. Next is time to focus on building the frame of the door itself. I took 4 pieces of wood and I stuck them together with a screw in each of the corners, and I dry fit it just to make sure that it still fits, and I'm happy with it. I went ahead and I made myself a little cross beam for the ceiling as well, just for some extra roof support, and if I want to attach a light on it, it's just going to make it a lot easier. And the wood structure's complete. Now it's time for the floor, the walls, and the roof, and that's going to all be made possible by wrapping it with all these materials right here. First material that I'm going to be using for the floor is going to be this yellow material right here, and when I got this, it said it's an industrial material that's waterproof, it's super tough and durable, and I think it's going to be a perfect barrier between me and the elements. I rolled out the fabric on the floor, then I began to cut it out with some scissors. Then I took it and I laid it on top of the floor. It's going to be my first barrier. I laid it as flat as I could. Then I took my staple gun and I started stapling it to the end. Once I had it stapled in, I went ahead with the hammer to give it a little tap. Then I went around with some scissors and I started cutting it to shape. I tried to staple it literally everywhere that I could on the sides. The only places that I couldn't staple it was right on top of the metal brackets. But other than that, I stapled it everywhere that I could. Once I made sure it was nice and secure, I trimmed off the extra with some scissors. Now we're on to layer 2, the insulation layer. I have myself this like mylar sandwich with some air pockets trapped in between it, and I think this is going to be a great lightweight insulation that's definitely going to keep in some heat and keep out some cold. After I cut it to length, I take it, I lay it over the yellow layer, lay it as flat as I can, and I staple that into place over it. I find it super satisfying going around with the scissors and cutting this to shape. Something about just taking the material, cutting it, and seeing it sit so nice and flush, I just really enjoy it. It fits like a glove. Now that the insulation is nice and attached to the floor, it's time to put on the final top layer. I got myself this brown, looks like it's water resistant material, and I think it's going to be great for just a rugged base and also cover up the dirt. So I take it and I unroll it from the roll, I lay it as flat as I can on the floor, and then you guessed it, I staple and hammer that into place. Then I cut it around like a glove and I trim off all the extra. And you can see it's already starting to cover up the dirt for me. This is what the final floor is going to look like, and I'm super happy with it. We got the 3-ply construction, we got the yellow waterproof rugged outer, the insulation middle, and then the brown on top. Looking wonderful. The first material that I'm going to be using for the structure of the wall is going to be this white fabric material right here. It's super soft and it looks nice. I take it, I line it up to a corner, I throw in a staple just to keep it in place and hold it up from falling, then I walk it around the whole structure. I take my scissors and I cut off the remainder on the tube. I then go around with the staple gun, stapling it literally everywhere that I can. All the corners, on the top of it, on the bottom of it, literally everywhere I just put in staples. I then take the scissors and trim off a lot more of the extra. After putting in a bunch of staples around the frame of the door, I take my utility knife and cut it open because we gotta get in here somehow, and honestly it's pretty satisfying opening it up. I then take the extra fabric, I wrap it around the frame of the door, and I staple it on the back side. I take the utility knife and I trim off all the extra. I even go around the top of the structure and trim off the extra there, and I even go around the bottom and trim off the extra there as well. The first layer is complete. I then take my second layer of insulation, I staple it into place, and I walk around the whole structure as well. This is definitely making me think of the time I made a shelter out of aluminum foil, or at least makes me think of like a burrito or something. I then put in some staples, and then I take some scissors and cut off the extra. Time to open up the door. This stuff cuts like butter with the utility knife, and it is just super satisfying. I then take it, I wrap it around and staple it to the frame of the door, and I cut off all the extra. Second layer done. Now for the final layer of the wall, the rugged yellow material. I go ahead and put in a staple to hold it in place, then I slowly take it and unroll it around the whole structure. Once I wrapped it up completely, I put in a staple to hold it in place, Then I went around with some scissors to cut out where the wheel goes, and then I put staples everywhere I could. Top, bottom, all the corners, all the sides, and I just went crazy with it. I then went around and trimmed up all the extra material, and then I went ahead and started to open up the door. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the build, cutting open the door hole. I then wrapped it around and stapled it to the back of the door and cut off all the extra. This thing is looking really nice, almost like a block of cheese. We're still missing something, the roof. So let's get it on there. The first layer is the fabric layer, lay it down flat, staple it in place, then go around and trim it on up. Insulation time. Roll on the layer of insulation, hold it nice and flat, staple that into place, then trim that on up as well. And the final layer of cheese on top. Unroll the top layer, lay it nice and flat, put in a whole bunch of staples, make sure they're nice and flat in there. Then I ended up taking the corners and folding it up really nicely so it looks really clean. Then I put in staples all around, make sure they're nice and flat, and trimmed off all the extra. I then took a bunch of this thin wood strip and I ended up laying it on top of all of the staple marks, and then I put in a bunch of screws just to really cover up the staple marks and hold all the fabric into place. And I put that stuff everywhere that I put staples, and all of the top, all of the bottom, all of the sides, all of the corners, around the door frame. I then took these large metal ringlets and I attached them to the 4x4s themselves with some really long screws. I ended up putting on one on each side of the camper on the front of it. Let's get this door covered. I wanted this to be one continuous sheet of this white fabric, but that's all that I had, so I had to just make do with it. I then trimmed up all of the extra, and it was time to lay on the insulation. I stapled that to the board as well, and I trimmed off all that extra too. And now for the last layer of cheese. I laid it down, and honestly, when I flipped it over, it made me think I was making like a canvas for painting or something. I stapled it all down, I trimmed off all the extra, I folded it over, and it's actually really satisfying to make this. I then took a bunch of the wood strip and I put it on each side of it to really cover up all of the staple marks and really hold this thing together super solid. I then take the door, I dry fit it in the camper, and it's fitting like a glove. I'm so happy with it. Next, we gotta get some hinges on it. I got myself 2 of these nice metal hinges, and then I just screwed them onto the door. Once they were both on the door, it was time to attach it to the camper. I lifted it up, held it in place, and just stuck them on there. And the door opens up really nice and fluid. I then went ahead and installed a little metal handle on the door just to make it a lot easier to open and close it. I wanted to also have a way to lock the door when I was transporting it, so I screwed on this small piece of wood so there's a little slot so you could slide in another piece of wood and it locks it in place. I also got this foam insulation strip that I measure it up, I cut it with scissors, I take off the backing, and I stick it into place. This is just to keep any draft out from the door. It should also do a good job of keeping in some heat, keeping out some cold, and protecting me from the elements better. It makes it fit like a glove. Next, I got this little battery powered light with a little on-off switch. I put a little bit of alien tape on the back of it, and I stuck it onto the crossbeam on the ceiling. This is going to be a perfect little light. It's got a little touch on-off switch, it folds out, and you can adjust where it points. I also took and modified an over-the-door shoe holder. I added a rope on it, I put some screws in my camper and hung it up, and this is going to be perfect for holding a bunch of my stuff. I also took the little lock key, I drilled a hole in it, I put the rope through it and I tied it to it, and then I tied the other end of the rope to the camper itself, just so I'll never lose this thing. The whole point of the lock key is really just to keep it closed when I'm pulling it through the forest. Time to put some rope on the front. I have this really thick blue rope that I put through the 2 little ringlets on the front. I cut it to length with the scissors and I tie it in a really strong knot. This rope's going to be the way that I can pull this out to the forest. It's really strong and it looks nice. I ended up taking the small little rope tie down and I screwed it onto the structure. I took a thin rope with loops on the end of it. I attached it to the tie down, I threaded it through the handle on the door, I lifted it up and I attached the other loop to the rope tie down, and if you notice, it keeps the door suspended just like a little sunshade or to keep off the elements if it's raining or snowing. And now, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to take it out in the wild and test it out. So, we're going to pack up all of our gear for the night, get prepared, get ready, close the door, and head on out and have a beautiful night. Let's go. Well, I'm in the forest again, except this time I have my own little handmade camper that I pulled out here. This whole thing is wrapped in this really nice rugged waterproof material. It's got like a 3-ply construction. It's got this yellow outer layer, and it's got an insulation air like middle layer. Then it has a nice white fabric inner layer that we'll check out once we're inside. But this thing held up really well being pulled out here through all those crazy thick vines and thorns. I will say that the tires are a little bit small, and the vines just kept getting caught on them when I had to pull it through the vine field. So that was definitely the hardest part. The structure is about 7 feet long by 4 feet tall and 4 feet deep. Definitely want to take it camping during a big snowstorm this year whenever it starts to snow. But yeah, I'm just super pleased with this whole build and whole process. But let's go ahead and check out the inside of it. You can see here, I got my sleeping bag, I got my little sleeping mat, a little backpack, a big old tripod here, a sweatshirt as well. And over here is the organization corner. Pretty much camera gear, cooking gear, you know what that is. Got some water, a lantern, also a flashlight, and this beautiful thing right here. And you can tell on the inside, the whole thing has this really nice kind of just white fabric on it. I wanted something that I could look at that was more pleasing than just the reflective mylar insulations. And you can see the whole wood structure of the thing. Made out of pretty thick wood. These are 4x4s and these are 2x4s, and then there's some thin wood underneath this sort of brown base right here. I went with a brown color base because my feet are going to be in here at some points, and this thing is going to get real dirty if I had it looking white or yellow. But yeah, this thing is really cool, super solid, super happy with it, and I got myself a little light. So I guess the next thing is let's set up camp, get comfy, and just enjoy the night. We are in our shelter. Got this mattress pad right here. The walls are so soft. All right, hats off. And I also got this sleeping bag right here because it's probably gonna get cold tonight, but this is a really good sleeping bag. It's already starting to feel like home. Oh yeah, this is gonna be really nice. I wanted to make this thing big enough where I didn't feel claustrophobic, but small enough where I could bring it out with me in the forest. I could have probably gotten away with making it a little bit smaller, but I'm super happy with it. So right now we're gonna notice a door doesn't lock. It only locks from the outside. And if I'm feeling like it, I can just bring in the little chuck so no one can mess with me. But I mean, who's gonna be out here? But I also did buy this. I forgot to install it. It's a little latch with a little eyelet. There we go. We got a little door lock. I also want to point out that this is not airtight by any means, so I'm not really worrying about carbon monoxide, so there is some air coming in. But I did bring a detector, and I'm going to stick it up on the wall with just a little bit of tape. Perfect.
figured as long as I'm out here, we might as well go and check on the bushcraft shelter, see how it's holding up. It's been almost a month, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. All right, we're coming up on it, and it's looking really good still. Very nice. I'm still super proud of this one. Let's check out the inside. Any skunks living in here? I'm sleeping in quite the upgrade compared to this tonight. But I'm glad that this is still doing good. Maybe I'll come visit it in the winter. Does look like something dug some holes right there. I don't know what that is. Well, it makes me really happy to see that thing's still standing strong. Put a lot of work in that one. There it is. The cheese cube camper. It's about to be dinner time. Brought myself my little stove, propane. Tonight we're gonna be having some spicy seafood ramen. Got myself some bok choy, a jalapeno. I believe this is a serrano. Make it nice and spicy. Always love me some spice. I'm also gonna throw in a can of mackerel. Should be pretty tasty. This is looking pretty good. It's so nice to finally relax. It was a lot of work to build this camper shelter. Gonna sleep good tonight, I know that. Nice and spicy soup. Makes my nose run. This is really nice on a nice fall day. Some nice hot spicy soup to relax in my yellow cheese box camper. And I'd love to take this thing out in the winter during a snowstorm, but I know that once I parked it out here and it snowed a lot, this thing would be stuck for a while. I don't know if I can put like sleds on this thing or something like that. It's probably too heavy for that. This is good though. Good soup. Just relaxing after dinner. Got the spice bubbling around in my belly. It was delicious. One thing I did remember, or I guess what I didn't remember, is I forgot my pillow. So it looks like I'm sleeping on my sweatshirt as a pillow. So nice out. The sun is starting to set. It gets dark so early now. Just a little bit of the sunset poking through the trees. The sun's setting outside. There was a really nice kind of pink sunset in the distance, but we're pretty in the forest, so I couldn't really get a good view of it. And I'm just relaxing in my handmade little camper that I wheeled on out here. And it's pretty cozy in here, I'm not gonna lie. I'm excited to spend the night in it. Definitely pretty chilly outside, around like 45 degrees or so Fahrenheit. And I did bring some hand warmers in case I decide I need them. Well, let's go on a little night walk. I went ahead and I left the camper open just so hopefully the light coming through it, I can find it easier. And hopefully nothing jumps in there when I'm gone, like a raccoon or something. So many leaves everywhere. I don't know if you can see the moon over there. Very foggy looking moon. I didn't really see any animals earlier today. Just like a squirrel. Where is that thing? Oh, there it is. You can see through the trees. There's more hidden than I thought. And I walked the opposite way of the door, so it doesn't even help that I left it open. The handmade camper. And we're in for the night. I'm just relaxing. I got back in from my night walk. I'm tucked in my sleeping bag. This thing is super rugged and warm, the sleeping bag. I absolutely love it. But yeah, it's just been a beautiful couple days building this thing, taking it out here, now spending the night in it. I'm super proud of this shelter, this camper, this thing on wheels. It turned out really nice, and I'm really happy that I went ahead and got this white fabric instead of just leaving it that reflective material, the insulation. I almost didn't get this fabric, and it would have been very reflective in here and different looking. So I'm really happy that I went with that. It feels more homey and more, it feels comfortable in here, to be honest. Got my main light on, got my lantern on, got my little buddy there, got a couple snacks and water in the corner, got my carbon monoxide detector. I can lay completely flat and I'm very comfortable. I can even stretch out. I can even stretch and like not even touch the ceiling. I can sit up in here. I have enough room for all my gear in the front. I like how I repurposed the shoe rack thing, even though I had to cut it in half. And I'm just super happy with this build. It's got the really nice waterproof material on the outside, which I do want to test during a snowstorm in the winter, which is partially why I put that insulation on as well. And yeah, this thing is just really cool. Super solid. I'm not worried about it breaking or cracking. Even if it falls over, this thing is like a rock. I'm just going to relax a little bit longer, then I'm going to catch some sleep. But also in the morning, we're going to wake up, we're going to just relax, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the weather, enjoy the fall leaves, and have ourselves a wonderful pancake meal in the forest, which I always love. Yep, brought my Steam Deck. Anyways, catch some good sleep, and I'll see you all in the morning. Good morning. We made it through the night and it got pretty chilly. It's around maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit or so, but my sleeping bag kept me super warm and it was a really calm night. I really didn't hear anything going on outside. But it's the morning, we made it through the night. I guess in a couple minutes we're gonna go check outside and then have ourselves a nice pancake breakfast. It sounds good to me. Well, it held up perfect. There is a layer of like dew on the surface of it, but this thing is waterproof, so I'm not worried about that. And I don't think anything really came and messed with us at night. Next thing is, let's make ourselves a pancake breakfast. It is definitely cold this morning. I can see my breath. And I'm gonna put a little bit of oil. Ooh. Can I even get this spatula in here? That's good. That is good. Ooh, these are gonna be so good. Brought myself some honey, and let's enjoy these while they're hot. I can hear some geese flying overhead. The honey's like frozen. I think I want to make giant pancakes from now on. They're better when they're big and fluffy like that. So good. It was really nice to spend the night in here. It was so cozy and comfy. I didn't have to worry about anything like any animals trying to get in here. I wasn't a thought on my mind unlike some of the other shelters. So that was really nice, and I slept pretty well. And it got definitely chilly, and the carbon monoxide detector didn't go off. It makes me wonder if I can plug up some more of these little gaps so I can kind of keep the heat in. We'll see. I'll play with that a little bit and kind of prepare for the winter time. But yeah, I'm just enjoying some pancakes in the morning. Nice little pancake breakfast in the forest, which is one of my favorites always. And then after I have breakfast, I'm gonna relax a little bit. Then it's gonna be time to pack up, which is really easy. I just gotta close the hatch, then drag this thing back. Awesome. It's been real, Mr. Cheesebox. Until next time.